All right, guys, welcome back for this next episode. um, this is going to be RPG systems, not necessarily a specifically gas series. So, what I'd like to do first is we have health, everything's set up, but let's make it just a scotch bit more visible. We're going to come back to the attribute set and we're going to make two more attributes, which is F gameplay attribute data. We're going to make mana, for example, and then attribute accessors, URPG attribute set, mana, property, blueprint, read only, replicated using on rep mana. And then copy, paste, max mana, max mana, max mana, on rep mana, const f gameplay attribute data by reference old mana u function. Copy, paste, max mana, max mana. Generate definitions for the rep notifies, and just the same thing, boys. Gameplay attribute rep notify URPG attribute set mana old mana. Gameplay attribute rep notify URPG set max mana old mana. You will learn attributes are nothing but repetitiveness. Do rep life time condition note. Excuse the typing. Condition URPG. What is going on with my typing? URPG attribute set mana condition none. Why does it keep hitting that button? Rep notify always. Rep lifetime URPG attribute set max mana none. Rep notify always. And then we're going to say the same thing if data dot evaluated data dot attribute is equal to get mana attribute, not get mana attribute, and then we're going to set mana equal to f match clamp get mana between 0.f and get max mana. Now we have mana and max mana. And then, so what we're going to do is, this is not going to be a very scalable, flexible method, how I start by doing this, but that's only because we only have a couple attributes. And our heads up display, our HUD is not going to be very big right now. Given those two reasons, I'm just simply going to write these next functions inside the player. However, if this RPG grows to any size, I will end up refactoring how I do these specific couple things in here, and it'll be fine. It won't be that big of a refactor later. But we just need void, and this is going to be bind callbacks to dependencies is the name of the function. And then we are going to need void broadcast initial values. We're going to need both of those functions. And then we need to come up to the public section. I need a public section, and inside this public section, we need to do void, and we can just say on health changed, and it'll say float current health, and then it'll say float max health. And there's going to be a U function of blueprint implementable events. And then we could do the same thing, void on mana changed. float current mana, float max mana. Function blueprint implementable events. So I'm buying callbacks to dependencies. I'm a huge fan of delegates. And if you're familiar with blueprints, if they're called event dispatchers. But I'm a huge fan of delegates. So the great news is for all of your attributes, they come with their own value change delegate, meaning every time their value changes, there's a delegate that will fire, broadcasting the old value and the new value. And it's just built into gas for you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if is valid for the RPG ability system component, and then if also needs to be is valid the RPG attributes. So if we have that and that up, looks like attributes is not there. So I'm going to need to include ability system attributes RPG attribute set. And then now it's there. So if I could do that, then what we're going to do is we're going to take the RPG ability system component and we're going to call the function get gameplay attribute value change delegate. And that requires which attribute you're going to do, which is going to be in the RPG attributes. We're going to say get health attribute. Now this is not a dynamic multicast delegate. So you don't have to add a U object and you don't have to add dynamic. What I just do is try to keep this all tidy. So I'm going to add a lambda instead. And the lambda, you can take this as the functor, and then it passes through the F on attribute change data by reference is what it's going to pass as a parameter. It's just called data. And then inside your lambda, you're just going to say on health changed. And the current value is data.newValue. That's your current health is data.newValue. And in order to get your max value, all you have to do is take the RPG attributes and say get max health, right? And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do RPG ability system comp, get gameplay attribute value change delegate for the RPG attributes of get mana attribute this time, however, right? And then we're going to add another lambda, taking this as the functor. And then const f on attribute change data, and then we can say on mana changed, and we can say data.newValue, and then RPG attributes. Excuse me, get max mana. So what that's going to do is just every time health changes or every time mana changes, it will broadcast this event. It'll fire this event on health change or on mana changed, right? It'll fire those and keep updating you automatically, except we don't have to create any bindings in the UI and the widgets, no bindings, no tick, no blah, 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 blah. We don't do that. So the thing is, however, when the what am I trying to say is when the game initializes initially, these are only going to be called when the value changes, right? But not when it's first initialized. That's going to be a separate issue. So all we need to do is on the initial values, we just need to check is valid RPG attributes. And if that's valid, we can just call on health changed and we can say RPG attributes, get health, RPG attributes, get max health, and we say out mana changed, RPG attributes, get mana, RPG attributes, get max mana. And what I'm going to want to do actually on this broadcast initial values, I'm going to leave this into blueprints. So we're going to make this a U function and we're going to make it blueprint callable. I want to make that blueprint callable because I like handling UI and widgets inside blueprints. They're a lot easier to deal with, in my opinion, inside blueprints than it is C++. So we're going to do the widgets and blueprints. However, I will want to bind callbacks to dependencies. So when is a good time to bind callbacks to dependencies? Well, I know I have an ability system component and attribute systems. I know I have an ability system component there. I'm initialized and then I have class defaults, right? So what I could do is I could say right here after I init the ability actor info, I can bind callbacks to dependencies right here. You're going to want bind callbacks to dependencies on all machines um, because even though the values are replicated, it's like the client, sure, their health will get updated and the server will update their health, but you also want the server, in case you're doing any multiplayer kind of connections where you need to visibly be able to display another client's health on a different client, you're going to want all machines being bound to these delegates so that everybody's health broadcasts and everything when it updates. But so now I have the delegates, and now I can broadcast their initial values. What I'm going to do is we're going to build and go in there and see how this works just to set up. Okay, we have a build succeeded, so it's going to launch the editor. Okay, now that we're back in the editor, excuse me, blueprints. Okay, we're going to make a new folder. It's going to be UI. It's going to be the overlay, or the HUD, or whatever you call it. Need a user interface. Need a widget. And I do mine W, you say WBP. I don't care what the prefix is. But this is my main overlay. This is not a UI tutorial, so we're just going to leave it at that. I need a size box. It's an overlay. Size box with an overlay, and then I want a wrap box, 2 progress bars, and a spacer. Okay, so I'm going to do desired. Size box is going to be sized, not sized to content. We'll do width and height override. So we'll just do what 300 by, we're going to want like 120. We'll do 125. And the overlay is filling. The wrap box is not filling, so we'll fill with the wrap box. And then so we're going to fill empty space with the progress bar. The spacer is going to force a new line, and this progress bar is going to force a new line. And the spacer, I'm just going to have like, oh, that's the wrong axis. So I'm going to have like 10. No, we'll do 5. We'll do 5. So, and then we'll stretch these out. Oh, fill empty space. We'll stretch those out. And the top one we're going to say is the health bar. And we're going to make sure that this is red. We could do that by checking the percent. And then the mana bar, we can leave that as blue. We can check that. Okay, that's percent. And we can call this mana bar, right? So in the graph, yeah, I don't really need that. In the graph, I'm going to write set health bar, and it's going to take two floats. Current health, max health, and we're going to just copy that and say set mana bar. Oops. Current mana. These functions are going to be straightforward. Mana bar, set percent. That's the wrong. Set percent, the function. And then off this, you're going to safe divide. Safe divide just allows you to divide these, and if the result is 0, instead of dividing by 0 and throwing a 0 error, it'll just return 0. So safe divide is going to divide the current by the max mana, and if it's 0, instead of that, it'll be fine. And then we're going to do the same thing with set health bar. Safe divide, take the health bar, set percent. Okay, so now that we have the overlay and set percent, I totally forgot. This is a canvas panel. I can take this size box and move it wherever I want. So we're not going to leave it up there in the top of the screen. We're going to anchor this down here. 0, 0. We're going to size that to content. I don't think that's 300 by 125. That's my problem. I think that's 300 by 125. Oh well. We'll just move it. So 200 over, and then we'll move it up, negative 100, negative 200. We'll just put it right there. Okay, so I've got health and mana. That really is tiny, isn't it? Wow. All right, well, those will be there. So now I have an overlay. Now I have the functions to actually set these, and I can come back into the character. And we're going to say on begin play, I'm going to make a function, and it's going to say init overlay. And init overlay, I'm going to create widget, and this is W overlay. And we're going to promote this to a variable. This is overhead or overlay widget ref. And in the overlay widget ref, I just think I need to add this to viewport. That's all I need to do really, because we're going to call init overlay. Well, we're going to call init overlay, but we're going to do this first. We're going to put is locally controlled. We're going to put a branch here for is locally controlled, because you only want the overlay to be called initialized if it's the actual player playing the game. And I know widgets are that, but I'm still not going to call init overlay on any simulated proxies or anything like that. So if we're locally controlled, we're going to init our overlay. Now remember, we wrote those events, right? We wrote those implementable events, so I can say on health changed. Remember, I could say that, and then I can say on mana changed. So now we have these two here, right? So what I could do is I could take the overhead, and we can say is valid. Now if the overlay widget ref is valid, I can just call set health bar. and just pass in the current health and the max health. And then I can do the same thing here. Right. So I've got those. And then, so now that the overlay is initialized, now I can call broadcast initial values. And then the broadcast initial values, remember, will just fire this event health changed and event mana changed and pass out the current values. So theoretically now, when I hit begin play, my health bar should be full and my mana bar should be empty. So let's put this back on single player, play as standalone, and my health bar is full and my mana bar is empty. And then check it on multiplayer, we'll play as 2 players, play on clients. And ooh, looks like they have default values. Okay, and we're gonna run into our first network latency issue. So we're gonna have 2 players. We can just do 1 player, it's fine. I'll play as a client, and you're gonna see I'm gonna start the game, and I don't have. This is the random values I made in the thing. This isn't updated at all, right? Because if I do 2 players, I could do a listen server. So it's 2 players, this big client, this is the server where my health has been updated to 100 and my mana is 0 because I didn't fill in any kind of mana. But on the client, it's like this. So the cheapest way you can get out of doing this is make a delay, right? This is network latency. So let's say you take 0.5 seconds, just a half second delay before you broadcast the initial values, right? Then what happens? Now, on your clients, now that it's had a half second to fully initialize and replicate all the values, now it's all there. So we're going to need to come up with a better solution. We're going to need to come up with a better solution than a delay. There's 0% chance we are just going to use a delay to really fix it. But at least we know what the problem is, right? It's just a latency issue. It's not going to be about the code. It's not replicated. It's just going to be a timing issue for clients on broadcasting the initial values. No problem. We can resolve that. Okay, so instead of doing a timer, or excuse me, instead of doing a delay, I'm very much a timer kind of person. So what we're going to do is right here, we're going to take broadcast initial values off, and we're going to pull right here, and we're going to say switch has authority. Now, if you have authority, we're just going to broadcast initial values. If you don't have authority, we're going to make a custom event. This is going to be client init delay, right? Client init delay, and it's going to be run on owning client, and this is reliable. And we're just going to set a timer by event. And what I'm going to do is give a full 1,000 milliseconds. We are going to give an entire second for everything to load up. And we're going to drag off and make a custom event and say client init delay finished. Client init delay finished is the event, at which case we can just say broadcast initial values. Keep in mind there's going to be more. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. And actually what I like to do is I want to add a new event graph, and we'll call this attribute callbacks. And we'll just X this and put this in the attribute callbacks. That way we don't have to look at the attribute callbacks. And we should be doing this. Now, oh, excuse me, don't forget client init delay. Excuse me. So now I have this event. It's gonna, if you're the server, it'll immediately broadcast your values. If you're a client, it'll just hang on a second before it does it to give you a chance to do that. So I still have it, let's see, 2 players, listen server. So the server will be the big screen, which immediately, And then here we go. So now everybody's got their attributes. Everyone's got their attributes and it's all labeled up. Okay, so now that we have those attributes, let's just let's make let's go back to our attribute abilities attributes, starting attributes. So we already have the health and the max health. We're going to add two more, right? We're going to want the, remember we need max mana first, which we're going to just override to 100. And then if you want to see your progress bar not be full, you can override this to some not 100 value, right? 75, for example. So now we're overriding to 75 out of 100 mana and 100 out of 100 health. So now we've got 75% mana and 75% mana here. So we know all of our attributes are working. We know our value change delegates are working. Oh no, we don't know our value change delegates are working because so far we only saw the broadcast initial values. So how do we check to see if our how do we see if that's going to happen? Well, we're going to do the blueprint quick. We can comment this and say client initial begin play or client begin play init to delay RPC. Yeah, we could just do that. We're just going to do some test buttons, right? So we can come into Ability System and we could just make like, we could say test folder, right? And we can literally make a gameplay effect, and GE test effects. So test effects, test buff, and then I can duplicate this and say test debuff. So I want one that's going to raise it and one that's going to lower it. So in the test buff, what I'm going to do is we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to say has duration, and the duration is going to be 3 seconds, and the period is going to be 0.5 seconds. So every 0.5 seconds for 3 seconds, and you do not want to execute the periodic effect on application because that will tick 1 extra time. When this gets applied, it does not immediately, like, so let's say this is a buff, right? So you wanted to add, we're going to add 50, we're going to do set it to health, and we're going to add what, 5 health, right? So 5 health every half second for 3 seconds. That's what we're going to do when we activate this effect. However, so it's going to add 5 health, but it's going to wait 0.5 seconds before the first time that it applies 5 health, right? If you leave this box checked, execute periodic effect on application, if you leave that box checked, then it will give them 5 health the moment that you apply the effect, and then it will give you 5 health for every half second for 3 seconds. So it will give, on things like this that tick, if you leave this execute periodic effect on application true, it will tick 1 extra time. So you intend for this to be 6 ticks of 5. So you intend for this to heal 30 health. But if you leave the execute on application, this will heal really 35 health. So leave that off so our tick effects will be there. So this will heal health a little bit over time with the test buff, and then the test debuff, we're going to make it an instant, and we can take it from health and we can add a negative 50. So the test buff and test debuff is going to hurt ourselves. And then we're just going to do keyboard 1 and keyboard 2. I'm just debugging these right now. Oh, you know what I didn't do actually, now that I'm here, just to even test this on the player, I forgot a very important step. So what we're going to end up doing is just calling get ability system component right here. And the actor is going to be itself, right? And normally this would work and there wouldn't be any problems. However, we forgot one important thing for this to work. In order for these engine functions, this get ability system component that the engine gives you, in order for that to work, the actor that it is getting the ability system component from, this is a standard regular ability system component because it's the engine feature, not our custom class. So whoever is going to be getting the ability system component off this, whoever this actor is, they need to inherit from the IAbilitySystemInterface and have that virtual override, just the regular ability system override. So everybody's going to need to save all, and we're going to need to come back into the RPG systems and back in the character itself. We're also going to need to inherit public IAbilitySystemInterface, which included the header, don't forget that. And then we are going to need the virtual UAbilitySystem component pointer, get ability system component const override, where we just return RPG ability system component. And then we just recompile and reload. Okay, I saw while it was building, I saw a red line come through here. I don't like that. Log uObject globals. Can't find file for the third person character. Well, it's there, I promise. Failed to find blueprint third person blueprint character C. Well, that's the C, so that's an object. That must be a bizarre error because we have the blueprint class and it's working fine. So anyway, now that we're back here, now that we inherit from the ability system component interface, now we can use this blueprint get ability system component, right? And all we're going to do is apply a gameplay effect to self. We're doing the quick test dirty apply gameplay effect to self. We're doing this just to make sure it works. So number 2 is going to be the debuff, and test buff is number 1. So now we should be able to see the attribute value change delegates in both. So debuff is number 2. That didn't work. Oh, that number 2 works. So that takes away my health and it automatically updates. And then I press 1 and it's ticking back up, but it only heals 30. So 2 goes down 50, but 1 only goes up 30. So that's the server. So everything's working fine there. So let's pull up our client and then press 2. Oh, the problem is clients can't apply gameplay effects to self like this. You can't. It's server authoritative. You can't, like the client doesn't own this. So we're gonna have to figure out a different way to test the client.